So good morning. I just heard 5 minutes ago that I have to do the presentation in English, so I have to improvise a bit because the whole presentation is in Dutch. But I think for 95% of the attendance it will be no problem to read the Dutch part at least. So my name is Bas Piek. I'm from MCS. We are a value-add distributor and we sell 5G. And Mark asked me to share some information with you on what we are doing on 5G already. I'm here together with Mark. He's in the back of the room and he's available for some questions as well. So what do we do? Quickly, the commercial part of the presentation. We are a value-add distributor. We sell private networks, 2G in the past, 4G still present, and 5G networks. But we also sell IoT solutions. Our customers are mainly system integrators that sell that total solution to their customers, and we deliver a part of that, and we help them out to make the whole chain of IoT or private networks complete, and in some cases we also service that. We're also part of the Field Lab 5G Do IT Field Lab. We do that together with the TNO, the TU Delft, SURF, and some other organizations, and we operate for already 4 years 2 5G networks, one in the TU Delft area and one on the Unmanned Valley in Katwijk. We added last year Tomato World in Naaldwijk, and Robo House will be operating very soon, in the next couple of weeks. That are 4 active 5G networks where we do all kinds of experiments, but I'll come back to that later. Yeah, this is our mission statement. We do this for already 27 years in the Netherlands and in Belgium. Yeah, we help our partners out. We create successful IoT solutions and private networks. So where are we now with 5G? And I had to do a presentation 2 weeks ago, and I just asked ChatGPT, okay, where are we with 5G and what can it do, for instance, on industrial automation? And then I draw up some pictures, and this is a picture where you see a lot of wires in an industrial environment, and yeah, and why don't you make it wireless? And I think in the past there has been several attempts to do that with for instance Wi-Fi, and I know that I'm in a room with a lot of Wi-Fi guys, but yeah, there are some limitations on Wi-Fi to make it fully wireless. But ChatGPT says, yeah, it's possible with 5G. You can create a complete wireless environment and have a full control over your industrial automation with the 5G private network. And this is just a bit of fun, of course. But this is the real promise of 5G. This is an Nokia slide, and this gives in more or less 3 items the promise of 5G over the next coming years. And it's all about incredible fast speed, very wide broadband capacity, and very high reliability. And I will come back to that at a later point in the slide where I compare it with Wi-Fi at the moment. But this is the promise. This is the outlook for the next coming years. Some of these parts are already available in the 5G networks that you can buy today. But some of them still are in the roadmap and need to be developed in a later stage. So first, a comparison to 4G, because 4G in a private state is already available, but it has some limitations. And especially if you already work with private 4G, you know that the main reason why it's interesting in some cases, but totally not interesting in some other cases, is that there's a limitation on the bandwidth. It's only 5 megahertz that is available, and that means that you can have a 35 down, 17.5 up, theoretically, but it's not really a very high capacity network. But in some cases it can be really useful, for instance in care centers, logistics centers, where voice and data needs to be combined. But if you compare it to 5G, and especially with private 5G, and we'll come back to the spectrum part later, is that the bandwidth in a 4G mobile network of an MNO is limited to 20 megahertz. With 5G, it's 100 megahertz, so it's times 5, and that says everything about capacity. If you look at speed, it's 10 gig in a 5G, and it's 10 MB in a 4G network. If you look at the latency in a 4G network is more than 50 milliseconds. We already did test in a 5G environment, in a private environment, with round trips below the 10 milliseconds. Security is double, and if you look at the mobility, yeah, it's 5G is true and full mobility, and with 4G it's basic mobility. What about spectrum? Because I think that was for the last couple of 2-3 years, for the ones that are really into private networks, and I see some persons in the room that broke their hands on it. Hey, Jan? It's all about spectrum. So since December last year, we have the availability in the Dutch market to have 50 megahertz spectrum blocks, 2 at least. And the main part, the public part for the MNOs, it still needs to be auctioned. And hopefully it will happen somewhere in the next coming months. But then the MNOs in the Dutch market will finally have true 5G. If you now have 5G on your phone, it's 700 megahertz. It's a marketing tool, but it's not the real 5G that was in the slide with all the promises of Nokia. There they need this particular spectrum for. So since December, there is the possibility, if you have a manufacturer plant, you have a logistics center, or you have customers that have a demand for that, or healthcare centers, you can go to the RDE, which is the new telecom agency, and you can ask for 50 megahertz of spectrum in the block 3.4 to 3.45 and 3.75, 3.8. And it's a pretty easy procedure. It's not that costly, and the time length of the license you get is the same length as the length of the auctions that need to take place for the MNOs. So it's more than 15 years. And that makes it interesting to do also an investment on that, because you don't have the uncertainty that the license will drop after a few years. But it's 50 megahertz. In the Belgian market, they also have private spectrum, but in a different spectrum part. So it's 3.8 to 4.2, so it's directly connected to where the Dutch market ends, the Belgian market starts, and you can do a request for blocks of 40 megahertz each. So also in the Belgian market you can start private networks. So then, the comparison to Wi-Fi. And I'm a 4G, 5G guy, so it's always a bit difficult to compare with Wi-Fi. That is a technique that is not what we offer to our customers. But I try to make it as objective as possible. Yeah, Wi-Fi is really office IT, and it's an excellent ecosystem. Everybody makes use of it daily. It's as important as water that comes out of a water system. But if you look at 5G, it's more operational IT. It goes a few steps further, especially if you compare to indoor and outdoor. Wi-Fi is mainly indoor, and 5G is easy for setups outdoor as indoor, and also combined. If you look at the level of critical networks, then Wi-Fi is again office IT. But with 5G you can build mission and business critical networks. The quality of service you can completely manage on a very low level. If you look at the latency, Wi-Fi is a very high capacity and local management, and with reliability on the 5G, yeah, it's really high. It has a really high reliability, and it also has a very low latency. You can make every 5G network fully redundant. The quality of service, yeah, with Wi-Fi it's always best effort. At the end, And with 5G, you can make it really commitment quality of service. Yeah, the spectrum, and I think that is the most important part. With Wi-Fi, you have unlicensed spectrum, which is easy. You just buy the radio part, you install it, and it basically works. But the nice part about 5G is that it's licensed spectrum. So there is an official government department that has control over that licensed part and makes sure that everybody keeps and sticks to the rules that apply for everybody that has 5G networks. And therefore you can control it much more than when it's unlicensed. And the security part, yeah, the Wi-Fi, it's evolving as well. So Wi-Fi is very secure. On the 5G part, you have, yeah, besides the login to the core, you also have the SIM authentication. With your PIN numbers, with your SIM, you basically control every device that comes on the network on 2 levels. And as far as we know, 5G network or 4G network never has been hacked. So that is, I think, a pretty tough statement as well. Yeah, Wi-Fi is basic mobility, especially when you have appliances that have a kind of speed, more than 5 km per hour, then Wi-Fi is pretty difficult. You have to hand over between the different radios. Yeah, and 5G and also 4G are fully designed for mobility. Yeah, you can drive with any speed you want, and there's a handover between the different radios. So that's the comparison. So that makes 5G an interesting candidate if you look for industrial automation, for healthcare, for logistics centers, yeah, and many more other situations. Yeah, so how do you recognize a 5G use case? Of course, when it needs really high speed, and it needs at least to support devices that maybe move with a kind of speed, or devices that have to be moved in a frequent way, when low latency is very important. When you have big chunks of data, when security is an item, and when you demand a very high quality of service. Now, some use cases. So together with the Do IT Field Lab, we did some a test the last couple of 4 years, and I took some of the examples to share with you here. So this is a picture of Nobian, which is a chemical plant in the Botlek area. They run on Wi-Fi, and they had troubles, especially in this environment where they make chlorate from salt, with a lot of metal constructions. That Wi-Fi is, yeah, they always have difficulty to create a qualitative network. So we set up a 5G network there with only 2 radios to see what is the effect of 5G with the 100 megahertz bandwidth in the spectrum on the quality of service we could deliver. There were really interesting insights that we only needed 2 radios compared to lots of radios in a Wi-Fi environment, and the quality was excellent. So even when the situation is really challenging, with 5G you can create a reliable network. Yeah, this is Wally. Actually, it's AX Robotics. I think this is one of the most interesting cases we did. This is a robot that does gas and oil inspections in an ATAX 2 environment. So it needs to be completely spark-free, and it can autonomously drive around an area where it does inspection on gas leaks, oil leaks, or other hazards. It builds up an environment with LiDAR. So it needs really high bandwidth with the cloud application, or an application that is really close by in a truck. And it needs to sense all kinds of oil and gas potential hazards and send it back to the control center. Yeah, we did a round trip on 5G within less than 12 milliseconds, and we were able to let this robot drive completely autonomously in an oil and gas environment. And actually, at the moment, they use now 5G for operations. These are typically robots that you see, for instance, Shell makes use of it, SO does, and they plan to roll it out all over the world. This is a complete different business case, or test case. This is Audis. So this is one of the 5G applications that you do not think of immediately. People with a hearing aid, they make use of a small device in the ear, we all know it. But the algorithms in that device are very limited. I wasn't aware of that, but they are already very old and they haven't updated that much. So the range where you can help somebody with hearing aid, with a hearing device, is limited. If you bring that to the cloud, it's basically unlimited. And that's what Oz did. So they brought the technique of the hearing device to the cloud, and they connected a device with the cloud. So when the audio comes in, it's being transferred to the cloud, the magic is done there, and it was sent back to the person with a hearing aid. And that gave very interesting results. Of course, the challenge there for the long term for them is how do you make it connect with 5G and energy capacity and things like that. Will the phone be part of that or not? But this was just a test to see were they able, with a very low latency, to make it work, that you do not have the delay in seeing somebody's lips move and then have the right audio in your ear. So now they have brought it back to a level where they have an application on MPO Start and Netflix. So that's the first start, to bring it back to your mobile device and have certain levels like an equalizer for people with hearing aid to adjust it. But the next step will be in the future, that is their dream, that they have it fully in the cloud. So interesting project. And the other one I wanted to share with you is Mainblades. This is a drone. It does inspection on airplanes. Did any one of you step into an airplane lately where you saw some duct tape on the wings or on the body? That you thought, okay, what? Yeah, I see some people nodding. I had it too, but I learned that it's only to protect the paint. Because if the planes are very high in the atmosphere, it really hits the paint and also the body of the aluminium underneath it. And robots like this do these inspections. So they fly around the airplane in their original form. They make pictures, and the pictures were put on an SD card. The drone comes back. They took the SD card, put it in their laptop, and then they started doing the analysis of all the pictures. With the duality field that we made it completely wireless, so all the data was immediately transferred from the camera to the cloud. So yeah, the inspection time was limited to a very, they made a big gain on doing the data analysis immediately instead of taking out the SD card and then start. It takes really high definition pictures on a very small, very high frame rate on very small parts of the plane to see if there are tears in the body, if the paint is still alright. So it's an important part of the safety procedure for the airlines. So that is for me to sum it up a bit. 5G is the new world standard for at least mobile communication, but it opens up a complete world, and it will also replace 2G and 3G, which in the Netherlands is already almost phased out, and in the Belgian market it will phase out in the next coming years. 4G will still remain, but after we have introduced 6G somewhere after 2030, then also 4G will be the next runaround to make space for more capacity. I think it's a really interesting alternative for existing networks, and it can also add functionality that is not yet available. The 3GPP makes standards for 5G development all over the world, and it will also create new ecosystems for the next coming years. Yeah, and I think the most interesting and the fun part is you can already test 5G today. So if any one of you has a case where they want to test 5G, yeah, we have the Duet field that we have 5G networks up and running, and they're open for testing. So it's an invitation to all of you to, if you are more interested to see how it works, or you have an application that you want to test, we have the availability to test that. One slide which is not in here but is important to mention, there are different kind of 5G networks. So we talk about 5G standalone here, which stands for SE, and 5G standalone stands for 5G radio with a 5G core. And you can make that completely on-premise, completely independent from any other network. But there are also 5G non-standalone networks, which you just at the end. And a non-standalone network is what the MNOs will start with as soon as they have the spectrum. And then you basically talk about the 5G radio on a 4G core. And especially the MNOs need that in the next coming, we expect 1.5 to 2 years to enable all of us to still have calls on our cellular phone, because there is no 5G audio for voice yet available. So it all goes over 4G. And then we have the hybrid, where you have a standalone network on premise, which is connected to a non-standalone from an operator part, and where you can have roaming between the two networks. And that is also something that will evolve the next coming years. So if you talk about 5G, there are different tastes. That's important to know. So yeah, time for some questions, and then coffee. Yes.
Yes, I have two questions basically. One about the spectrum. If we sell this product to a customer, do they need to apply for like we need this spectrum? You know what I mean? So do you get like a private spectrum, or is it something that's being reused? Which is
no, it is the private spectrum in the Netherlands. They call it perceel gebonden spectrum. So it's you really have to add in the application the cadastre information. Okay. You need to be the owner of the building or the ground, or you have to be the user of the building. So I say that the huurder, the tenant.
Yeah.
And that's part of the procedure. If that is all approved, you get the spectrum license on, let's say, that part of the area. So that can be multiple areas, but it can also be it can also be your office, for instance.
Yeah. It becomes your responsibility to lead outside your building or to the neighbors.
Exactly. So I don't know the English word, but the RDI, they determined grenswaarden. So there is a, let's say there are, you have to apply to certain rules
Within your site.
in what extent your radio signal goes over the border of your line, of your premises. Mm-hmm. And other license holders have the same obligation. Yeah. So the whole idea behind this principle is that everybody can ask for spectrum, but you have to manage it together. If not, so if there is interference because somebody does not apply to the rules, then you can go back to the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and then they have the RDE that will...
How large are the blocks that they sort of assign to you? Because it's 2 times 50 megahertz. How much of that 50 megahertz do you get when you apply for a license on your premise?
Yeah, it depends. So you have to make a choice whether you go for the lower part or the upper part. So if you go for the upper part, it's basically almost 50 in total. If you go to the lower part, it depends a bit in what area you are in the Netherlands, because the lower part, the frequency is really close to some of our Ministry of Defense spectrum. So in some cases you can only use like 30 or 35 megahertz of the spectrum, because you have to add a sort of decked guard band in between that you are not able to use. So that's for the capacity part, that's the megahertz. For your, if you look at the radio part, how much power can you send on the radios? Yeah, that depends on the premise where the spectrum is applicable for, and if you have neighbors that have an application for 5G as well in maybe the same spectrum band. Right. So, but at the moment there are like, I think 12 organizations that ask for spectrum since December. So there's room for a lot more. But we have to manage it ourselves.
And what about the costs for that license?
Yeah, we signed up for a license and we paid a few €100.
Oh,
So
that's not.
it's a small area, so we did it for our office.
50 years.
I think it will repeat every year, but to be honest, that is a bit unclear. Yeah, but we expect that it will return every year. We also manage experimental licenses that are in the same band as the Belgian market is using, and then for 1 year we pay around €2,500 for 1 year, so that's more expensive to have a 1 year license in an experimental environment than have a full license on the perceivable spectrum. And in the Belgian market, it's related to the size of your premise.
And how does it work with we have overlapping areas? For instance, I am halfway at Rotterdam. I want to cover all of my area. There's going to be a lot of covered firms in that area that I want to cover. How that going to work?
Yeah. Then you have the regulation says that it can be only on your premise. If somebody else comes in and asks for a license and he gets the license, you have to manage it together. So they fully push it back to the market and the market parties. If there is a conflict there, then the RDE will decide how they will manage it. But if the havenbedrijf will ask for spectrum for the total premises, it will be, of course, I think a very different procedure. I know Schiphol did, so they already made that step. So they have the whole Schiphol area. If KLM comes in and they want a piece of the spectrum, they most probably have to go to the other part of the spectrum. So there are 2 blocks of 50. So if they go to the other block, it's okay.
Shows up and then you have an issue.
And then you potentially have an issue. So then they go back to the grenswaardes, and then you have to manage it, the radio part on the borders. Yeah.
Can you tell us something about client devices, like routers, phones, tablets? What kinds of devices can be used on those networks?
Yeah, at the moment a lot. So it's the N77 and the N78 band. Those are the two. If you look at the specifications of routers, and it has 5G and it has N77 and it comes also with N78. It's N78 is the most important part for the Netherlands. If you look at the Belgian market, you need the N77, but most of the devices already cover that. So we have, if you look at the suppliers that we work with, we have routers in all kinds of variations, and almost every month new routers are added to that, and also the prices are dropping, because at the moment the routers are twice as expensive as 4G routers. Handset, I think all the headsets that are in the room here can work on this band, so that's not an issue. Then the second thing is that you need radios, you need the core. All the large manufacturers, Ericsson, Nokia, they already have networks that can fully cover this spectrum. We work with Druid, we have base cells for core, we have base cells for radios. They basically cover everything that is needed for these licenses. And we expect that narrowband IoT will come up very soon as well. So narrowband IoT for the small devices, for machine-to-machine communication, is now still limited a bit to the 4G technology, but in the next coming releases of the 3GGP, 5G narrowband IoT will be added as well. So the ecosystem is growing in a fast pace.
Can you segment the bandwidth that you get your license for say, the phone? You then segment that further down to makes it available for different entities or different tenants.
Yeah, you can make layers in the network, so you can create a specific part of the band for user A and another part of the band for user B. They call it slicing. So you can divide the network in more layers. And on every layer you can have your own quality of service. But if you cut the 50 megahertz in smaller pieces, then the capacity will decline as well. What we expect, but that's my personal expectations, and we have been really close to the whole discussion with the Ministry of Economic Affairs for this part of the public spectrum. But we expect that in the Netherlands, the 38 and the 44.2 will somehow in the near future potentially be added to the private spectrum part as well. So at least also from a government point of view, and at least from a worldwide point of view, 5G is potentially for private networks a really important technique. Yes, another question.
So if you have like an outdoor area, industrial or farm or whatever, you want at the edge of your lot, you want to have a proper signal strength for your applications and for your bandwidth, but then beyond that, it needs to fall below a certain value. So how would you balance that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We did some theoretical testing on that. The easiest way is to put the radios on the edge and have the front of the radios work inwards. So that on the other end, the radio signal becomes really weak very fast. And the interesting thing on 5G with private LTE, with the private 4G, and with Wi-Fi, the power of the antennas are limited. It's around between 125 and 250 milliwatts. With 5G, we already have installations with 5 watt. So the output strength of the radio is it's much higher. So you also need less radios to cover, at least outdoors, a big area. Any other questions? No, okay.
Are there any limitations where you can place these records?
If you go above by head 6 meters, you have to go to the local government to ask for approval. If you stay below, it's not necessary. Yeah, and of course in the application. So at the moment, if you apply for a license, they do not ask you for the output power of the radio. They only look at do you apply to the restrictions in the license. Operators work with radios on 35 watts, so but they are like 30 meters off the ground. Okay, then we go back to Mark. Thank you.